The champagne was still cold in my hand when my phone rang, shattering what should have been the most peaceful moment of my life. My son's voice dripped with the kind of entitlement that comes from never having worked a day for anything. 24 hours later, I was standing in my own foyer, watching a parade of strangers track sand across my Italian marble floors like they owned the place. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up to how this delicious mess started. 3 months ago, I sold Sterling Marketing Solutions, the company I'd built from nothing over 30 years. The buyers paid $2.8 million cash, and after taxes, I had enough to do exactly what I wanted: buy my dream beach house and disappear from the corporate rat race forever. The house was everything I'd fantasized about during those brutal 18-hour workdays. 6,000 square feet of weathered cedar and glass perched on the dunes of the Outer Banks, with panoramic ocean views and enough space to host my entire extended family for the holidays I'd been too busy to enjoy for decades. I'd been there exactly 8 hours when Brandon called. "No congratulations on your retirement, Mom," or "The house looks amazing." Just straight to business. "Mom, we need you to move to the guest room upstairs. Melissa's entire family is flying in tomorrow for a 2-week vacation. Her parents, her sister's family, her brother and his girlfriend. That's 11 people total." I actually laughed. "Brandon, honey, this is my house. If you want to vacation here, we can work out some dates." "No, you don't understand. We already booked their flights. They're expecting to stay in the master suite and the main bedrooms. The guest room has a perfectly good ocean view. You'll be fine up there." The casual assumption that I'd just comply left me momentarily speechless. This was the same son I'd put through business school, whose failed restaurant I'd bailed out twice, whose mortgage I'd helped with when his graphic design company nearly folded. "Brandon, I bought this house to relax and enjoy my retirement. I'm not running a hotel for Melissa's family." His voice turned cold in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of his father during our divorce negotiations. "Look, Mom, you've got this huge house all to yourself. It's selfish. And if you don't want to be reasonable about sharing it, well, I heard there's a very nice assisted living facility just down the coastal highway." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. My 35-year-old son was essentially telling me to accommodate his in-laws or face abandonment. Again. "I see," I said quietly. "And what if I refuse? Then I guess we'll have to reconsider how much help you actually need at your age. Living alone in such a big house, managing all that space. Maybe it's too much responsibility for someone in their mid-60s. After I hung up, I sat on my new deck watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of amber and gold. The beauty should have been healing, but all I could think about was the satisfied smugness in Brandon's voice. He thought he'd cornered me, thought I was just another helpless old woman who'd caved to emotional blackmail. What Brandon didn't know, what I'd learned in 30 years of business, was that the best victories come from letting your opponent think they've already won. The next morning, I started preparing for their arrival, but not in the way they expected. I woke up to the sound of car doors slamming and voices carrying across the morning air. Apparently, Melissa's family had decided to arrive at 7 a.m. without warning, because why would they consider that the homeowner might want advance notice? From my upstairs window, I watched a caravan of rental cars disgorge what looked like a small army. Melissa directed traffic like a general deploying troops, pointing toward different entrances and barking orders about luggage distribution. Her parents emerged from the first car, both wearing those aggressively casual vacation outfits that scream, "We're here to be served." What struck me most was how comfortable they all seemed. No hesitation, no glances toward the house wondering if they should knock first. They moved like people who'd been told this was their space now. I slipped on my robe and headed downstairs, curious to see how they'd handle actually encountering the homeowner. "Oh!" Melissa startled when she saw me, then quickly recovered. "Eleanor, Brandon said you'd moved upstairs already." "Good. The master suite gets the best morning light, and Mom has arthritis, so she really needs the ground floor bedroom." Her parents swept past me without introduction, wheeling their suitcases toward my bedroom like they were checking into a resort. Melissa's sister Rachel and her husband corralled their 2 teenagers toward the guest bedrooms on the second floor, while brother Kevin and his girlfriend claimed the den with the pull-out sofa. "Coffee's in the kitchen," I said mildly. Help yourselves. Oh, we brought our own supplies, Melissa chirped, opening my pantry and beginning to rearrange my carefully organized shelves. Mom's on a special diet and the kids are picky eaters. We'll just need you to clear out some refrigerator space. I watched her pile my groceries into a cardboard box like she was cleaning out an employee's desk. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. Where would you like me to put these? I asked, holding up my displaced food. The garage refrigerator should be fine. Brandon said you had one out there. Of course, Brandon had given them a complete inventory of my property. I wondered what else he'd shared during their planning sessions. By noon, my house had been completely transformed. Pool toys littered the deck, wet towels draped over my antique furniture, and the kitchen looked like a hurricane had hit it. Melissa's mother held court at my dining table, complaining loudly about the water pressure in her shower while her husband critiqued my cable channel selection. "Eleanor," Melissa's father called out, "we're going to need the Wi-Fi password. And do you have any of those little drink umbrellas? The kids are making tropical smoothies." The casual expectation that I'd serve as their personal concierge was breathtaking. But I just smiled and provided the password, then excused myself to the garage, where I spent the afternoon making phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to my attorney, Sarah Chen, who'd handled the house purchase. "Sarah, I need you to pull the deed on the Outer Banks property. Specifically, I need to confirm the exact legal ownership structure." The second call was to my accountant, who'd structured the house purchase for optimal tax benefits. "Jim, remember how we set up the beach house purchase? Walk me through the ownership details again." The third call was to a local investigator I'd used during some messy corporate acquisitions. "Mike, I need a background check run on some house guests. Full financial workup, employment history, social media deep dive. Yes, I'll pay your rush fee." By dinner time, while Melissa's clan devoured steaks they'd helped themselves to from my freezer, I had all the information I needed. But I wasn't ready to play my cards yet. Better to let them get truly comfortable first. That night, as I lay in the small guest room listening to 11 people enjoy my house below me, I smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring the first surprise. I woke up to find my coffee maker occupied by a line of Melissa's relatives, treating my kitchen like a hotel breakfast buffet. Her mother, Patricia, had taken over my entire counter space to prepare what appeared to be a gluten-free, dairy-free, joy-free feast for her various dietary restrictions. "Oh, Eleanor," she said without looking up, "we're going to need you to run to the store. Kevin's girlfriend is lactose intolerant, and Rachel's youngest is allergic to literally everything." I made a list. She handed me a 3-page shopping list written in the demanding scrawl of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Items like organic coconut milk, the expensive kind, not that watery stuff, and gluten-free bread that doesn't taste like cardboard, good luck, were highlighted in different colors according to urgency. The casual assumption that I'd become their unpaid grocery service was remarkable even by my family's standards. But instead of arguing, I took the list and headed for town. What they didn't know was that I had my own errands to run. My first stop was the hardware store, where I purchased several items that would prove useful later. Next, I visited the local phone company to discuss some changes to my service plan. Then a quick trip to my bank, where I had a fascinating conversation with the manager about account security features. By the time I returned with their groceries, Melissa's crew had made themselves even more at home. Kevin had rearranged my living room furniture to optimize TV viewing, while Rachel's kids had discovered my art supplies and were creating masterpieces on my dining room walls. "Oh, good. You're back," Melissa said, not bothering to help with the bags. "We're planning a big barbecue tomorrow night. About 30 people. Brandon's friends, some locals we've met, a few business contacts. You'll need to get steaks, hamburgers, hot dogs, all the sides. I sent you a text with the details. 30 people. In my house. Without my permission." "That sounds like quite a party," I said evenly. "It's going to be amazing. We're really going to put this place on the map. Brandon said you never entertained much, so it's probably good to get some real use out of this kitchen." I noticed she'd already started moving my personal items out of the common areas. Family photos, my books, even my mother's antique vase had been temporarily relocated to make room for their vacation aesthetic. That evening, while they planned their party from my deck chairs, I made another round of phone calls from the garage. this time to some old business contacts who owed me favors. Big favors. "Tom, it's Eleanor Sterling. Yes, I know I'm retired, but I need a small favor. How quickly can your catering company handle a last-minute event? 30 people, tomorrow night. Money's no object, but there's a catch." The next morning brought a flurry of activity as Melissa's family prepared for their grand party. They'd invited half the beach community, promising premium steaks and top-shelf liquor in my house. Patricia spent the morning criticizing my kitchen organization while simultaneously taking over every surface for party prep. Around noon, I heard Brandon's voice from the driveway and went to the window. He'd arrived with even more guests, college friends who'd apparently been promised a weekend at the family beach house. The casual way he distributed my spare keys to people I'd never met was particularly impressive. "Mom!" he called out when he saw me. "There you are. Hope you're ready for a real party. We've got some important people coming tonight. Business networking, you know? This house is perfect for making connections. Important people. In my house, for Brandon's networking opportunities." The irony was delicious. I spent the afternoon on the deck, reading and watching their preparations with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying a primitive tribe. They'd completely taken over, transforming my peaceful retreat into party central, never once asking if I minded having my home invaded by strangers. Around 5 p.m., I excused myself to get ready for the evening. After all, I wouldn't want to miss their big party. What they didn't know was that I'd prepared a few surprises of my own. By 6 p.m., cars lined my driveway like a luxury dealership showcase. Mercedes, BMWs, and Range Rovers belonging to the important people Brandon had invited to network at his mother's expense. I watched from my upstairs window as strangers wandered through my garden, helped themselves to drinks from my bar, and settled into my furniture like they owned it. Melissa had outdone herself with the decorations, creating what she called beach house chic by rearranging 30 years' worth of my collected treasures. My grandmother's quilts were now casual throw blankets. My award plaques had been tucked away as too corporate, and she'd actually moved my personal photographs to the closet so they wouldn't clutter the aesthetic. The final insult came when I saw Brandon giving someone a tour, describing the house as the family property, and casually mentioning that he was handling all the management decisions now that I was getting on in years. At 64, I chose my outfit carefully for the evening, a simple black dress that had served me well during hostile corporate takeovers. If you're going to deliver devastating news, you might as well look good doing it. The party was in full swing when I made my entrance. Brandon held court on the deck, regaling his audience with stories about acquiring the beach house and his plans for maximizing the property's potential. Melissa flitted between groups, playing hostess with impressive confidence for someone who'd never paid a dime toward the mortgage. "Eleanor," Patricia spotted me first, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for inconvenient elderly relatives. "There you are, dear. Could you check on the appetizers? I think they're running low." Of course, even at my own party, I was expected to serve as kitchen staff. Instead, I walked to the center of the deck and raised my voice just enough to catch everyone's attention. "Excuse me, everyone. If I could have just a moment?" The conversations gradually died as 30-plus strangers turned to look at the woman they'd been told was just the aging mother who came with the house. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate with us tonight. It's wonderful to see so many new faces enjoying this beautiful property." Brandon beamed, clearly pleased that his mother was finally embracing her role as gracious hostess to his networking event. "Before we continue," I said, pulling out my phone, "I have a few quick announcements." That's when the catering truck pulled into my driveway. Not the small, discreet catering company you might expect for a beach barbecue. This was Tom Morrison's premium event services, complete with uniformed staff, a full mobile kitchen, and enough equipment to service a corporate gala. "What's that?" Melissa asked, her hostess smile faltering slightly. "Oh, that's dinner," I said cheerfully. "I thought since we were having such a large party, we should do it right. Prime rib, lobster tails, champagne service, the works." Brandon's expression shifted from pleased to confused to worried in the span of 10 seconds. Premium catering for 30 people wasn't cheap, and he was apparently doing math in his head. "Mom, we already bought steaks." "Oh, don't worry about those. We'll save them for another time." I turned to address the crowd again. The catering staff will be setting up shortly, so if everyone could just give them some space to work. Tom Morrison himself approached, clipboard in hand and wearing the kind of satisfied expression that comes from being paid double his usual rate for a rush job. Ms. Sterling, where would you like the champagne station? The champagne station? Brandon's voice cracked slightly. Right by the pool, Tom, and make sure everyone gets the good stuff. Dom Perignon, not the house champagne. I could feel the crowd's energy shift from casual party to something more expensive. These were people who recognized quality when they heard it, and Dom Perignon was definitely not backyard barbecue fare. The catering staff moved with military precision, transforming my deck into an elegant dining area complete with linens, crystal, and silver service. Within 30 minutes, what had been a casual cookout became a high-end dinner party with a price tag that would make most people's mortgage payments look reasonable. Mom? Brandon pulled me aside, his networking smile replaced by panic. What's this going to cost? I smiled sweetly. Don't worry, honey. It's all taken care of. What I didn't tell him was exactly how it was being taken care of. That revelation would come later. For now, I was content to watch 30 strangers enjoy a $15,000 dinner party while my son slowly realized he might not be as in control of the situation as he'd thought. The morning after the party brought a reckoning that was almost worth the champagne hangover. I found Brandon and Melissa huddled over their phones at my dining table, frantically calling credit card companies and checking bank balances while surrounded by the remnants of last night's extravaganza. Empty Dom Perignon bottles lined the counter like expensive soldiers, while the catering bill, which I'd left conveniently on the kitchen island, created a paper trail of fiscal reality that had apparently sobered them both considerably. $15,000, Melissa whispered, staring at the invoice like it might spontaneously combust. For one dinner party. Brandon was on his third phone call to his bank, trying to explain why he needed his credit limit raised by exactly $15,000. The conversations weren't going well. Good morning, I said brightly, pouring myself coffee from the expensive machine they'd commandeered 3 days ago. How's everyone feeling after the big party? Mom, we need to talk. Brandon's voice had the strained quality of a man watching his financial future circle the drain. About that catering bill. Oh, wasn't it wonderful? Everyone raved about the lobster. Tom Morrison really outdid himself. We can't afford $15,000 for one dinner party. I tilted my head thoughtfully. That's strange. I was under the impression you were handling all the management decisions for this property now. At least, that's what you told all those nice people last night. The color drained from his face as the implications sank in. If he'd publicly claimed management responsibility for the house, then logically, he'd be responsible for its expenses as well. But Mom, I never actually said, oh, but you did. Several people mentioned how impressive it was that someone your age had acquired such a beautiful property and was managing it so professionally. I took a sip of coffee, savoring both the blend and the moment. They were particularly interested in your business model. Using family assets for networking events was quite innovative. Melissa's mother, Patricia, chose that moment to emerge from my master bedroom, wearing my robe and carrying my favorite coffee mug. Eleanor, dear, we're going to need fresh towels. And the Wi-Fi is running slowly. Can you call someone about that? The casual entitlement was breathtaking, even after 3 days of constant examples. But before I could respond, my phone rang. Eleanor Sterling, this is Janet Morrison from Coastal Properties Real Estate. I have some questions about the beach house listing. Beach house listing? I put the call on speaker, curious where this would lead. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison, but I haven't listed any property for sale. Oh, that's odd. We received an inquiry yesterday from a Brandon Sterling claiming to represent the owner for a potential sale. He provided detailed information about the property and mentioned he was authorized to handle all real estate decisions. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ocean waves through the open windows. Brandon's face had gone from worried to pure panic, while Melissa stared at him like he'd suddenly sprouted a second head. I see, I said calmly. Well, Mr. Sterling is not authorized to represent me in any real estate matters. If someone has been providing information about my property without permission, that's quite concerning. Should I file a report with the local authorities? Impersonating a property owner is a serious matter. Brandon was making frantic no gestures, but I pretended not to notice. Let me think about that and get back to you, Mrs. Morrison. Thank you for calling. After I hung up, the silence stretched until Patricia, oblivious to the tension, piped up again. Eleanor, about those towels. Get out. The words came out quiet, but clear as crystal. Excuse me? I said get out, all of you. Pack your things and leave my house. Brandon found his voice. Mom, you can't be serious. We're family. Family doesn't impersonate each other to real estate agents. Family doesn't throw $15,000 parties on someone else's credit. And family certainly doesn't threaten nursing homes when they don't get their way. I walked to the front door and held it open. You have 2 hours to collect your belongings and leave. If you're not gone by then, I'll be calling both the police and Mrs. Morrison back to file those reports. What happened next would teach them more about family than they'd apparently learned in their entire lives. The exodus began immediately, but not in the organized fashion you might expect from people who'd spent 4 days treating my home like their personal resort. Instead, it devolved into a chaotic scramble of accusations, blame-shifting, and desperate negotiations that would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. Patricia emerged from my master bedroom, dragging her suitcase and muttering about ungrateful hosts and false advertising. Kevin's girlfriend loudly complained about having to cut their vacation short because of my unreasonable demands. Rachel's teenagers actually seemed relieved. Apparently, sharing space with so many adults hadn't been their idea of a good time either. But it was Brandon's reaction that surprised me most. Instead of apologizing or attempting to make amends, he doubled down on his entitlement. You're making a huge mistake, Mom. Do you know who some of those people were last night? I was building valuable business relationships, networks that could benefit the whole family. The whole family? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the family you threatened to dump in a nursing home if I didn't comply with your demands? Melissa tried a different approach, switching to her most manipulative voice. Eleanor, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe we can work something out. Split the house time? Shared expenses? Shared expenses? I almost laughed. Like the $15,000 you can't afford to pay? Or the groceries I bought for your family's special diets? Or perhaps the utility bills that tripled when 11 people moved in? That's when Brandon played what he clearly thought was his ace card. Fine, but you're going to regret this. You think you can just live in this huge house all alone? At your age, what happens when you fall? When you can't manage the upkeep, you're going to need family, and we won't be there. The threat hung in the air like smoke, and I could see him thinking he'd won. That he'd successfully backed me into a corner with the specter of elderly helplessness and isolation. What Brandon didn't realize was that he'd just handed me the perfect opportunity to deliver the piece de resistance. You know what, Brandon? You're absolutely right. I can't manage this house alone. It's far too much responsibility for someone my age. His expression shifted to smug satisfaction. So you'll reconsider, which is why I sold it. The words dropped like a bomb in the sudden silence. Brandon's mouth actually fell open, while Melissa froze halfway through folding a beach towel. What do you mean sold it? Patricia demanded. I walked to my desk and retrieved a folder I'd been keeping for just this moment. I sold it. Yesterday morning, as a matter of fact. All cash offer, quick closing. Very convenient timing. But you can't have sold it. We're staying here. We have plans. Had plans, I corrected gently. The new owners take possession next week. Professional property managers from Chicago. Lovely people. They plan to rent it out to carefully screened families who appreciate peace and quiet. Of course, this wasn't entirely true. What I'd actually done was transfer the property into an LLC I controlled, with management handled by a company that specialized in high-end vacation rentals. But the effect was the same. Brandon and his entitled family were no longer welcome, and there was nothing they could do about it. You can't do this! Brandon's voice cracked with desperation. This is our family home. No! Brandon, this was my retirement home. The home you told me I was too old to manage alone. The home you threatened to take away from me if I didn't submit to your demands. I closed the folder with a satisfying snap. You were right about one thing, though. I do need family I can count on. I just realized you're not it. The final 20 minutes of their departure played out in a blur of slamming car doors and muttered threats about lawyers and family loyalty. But as the last rental car disappeared down my driveway, something interesting happened. My phone rang. "Ms. Sterling, this is David Chen from Outer Banks Property Management. We wanted to confirm that the Sterling Beach House is ready for its first rental guests. They arrive tomorrow for a 2-week stay. Payment has been received in full." I smiled, looking out at the ocean that was mine to enjoy again. "Yes, Mr. Chen. Everything's ready. I think you'll find our guests will be much more appreciative than the last group. After all, the best revenge isn't just success, it's profitable success." But this story was far from over. In fact, the real surprises were just beginning. The new renters arrived exactly as scheduled. The Patterson family from Richmond, a soft-spoken couple with 2 well-behaved teenage daughters who spent their first hour apologizing for disturbing me and asking permission to use the pool. The contrast with my recent house guests was so stark, it would have been funny if it weren't so refreshing. "Mrs. Sterling," Mrs. Patterson said carefully, "we want to make sure we're not imposing. The property management company said you live on site." "I have a small apartment above the garage," I lied smoothly.